Why was everyone ignoring her at the briefing table? The room hummed with the low static of a projector, the smell of stale coffee and inked maps hanging heavy. Men leaned forward, arms crossed, voices low, debating routes and contingencies. But her seat, 3 chairs down, might as well have been empty. She felt it, that subtle tightening when someone noticed her gaze, the way their eyes skated off, choosing the comfort of each other's faces. She had been there before. Ignored. Dismissed. But this time, something different. She let her pen roll slowly between her fingers, the sharp scratch of graphite echoing in her head like a clock ticking too loud. The mission was clear: extract a local intelligence officer who had gone dark in the valley. But nothing about this valley was simple. A maze of narrow ridgelines, shifting shadows, and ambush sites known to swallow men whole. She could already see the danger where the others only saw arrows on a map, but she didn't speak yet. Her name was Captain Elena Marquez, 34, helicopter pilot, ground-qualified sniper, and once she was something else entirely, before the accident, before the scar down her shoulder, before the paperwork that branded her with 3 words she hated more than pain itself: unfit for duty. Now here she was, sitting in a room where no one trusted her judgment, waiting for a moment that hadn't come. The colonel's voice carried over the murmurs. "We'll insert before dawn, 3 teams, 2 kilometers south of grid 17. We move fast, in and out." Someone coughed, chairs squeaked, boots tapped. And Elena thought, they don't see it, they don't hear it. Because she did. She had been in that valley once, years ago, flying night insertions before she was grounded. The sound of rotors bouncing against canyon walls, the red tracer fire threading up like claws. The valley remembered her. She remembered it. But the colonel kept talking, the plan rolled forward, and she stayed silent. Not yet. Across the table, Sergeant Duran leaned back, his grin a little too easy. "As long as Marquez isn't on the stick, we should be fine, right?" A ripple of chuckles, muted, mean. Elena felt her chest tighten, the laugh lines carving deeper around the men who had already written her off. She didn't flinch. She didn't give them the satisfaction. She just closed her notebook. And the silence around her thickened. Later in the barracks, she sat on the lower bunk, gear spread across the mattress in neat lines. Rifle, scope, sidearm, rations, water. Her hands moved automatically, muscle memory from years of repetition. But her mind was elsewhere, drifting to another place, another time. Her father's voice, clear as ever. "You don't have to fight to be seen, Elena. You fight because someone has to." She was 17 when he said it. He never came home from his last deployment. The folded flag still lived in her mother's house, untouched, behind glass. That was why she had joined, not to prove herself, not to be the best, but because absence leaves a hole and someone has to fill it. She breathed deeply, in, out. But tonight the air tasted of iron, the kind of night that foreshadows something coming. Footsteps broke her thought. Corporal Singh paused in the doorway, adjusting the strap on his pack. He looked younger than his years, eyes always darting like he was expecting bad news. He gave her a nod. Not friendly, not cold, just acknowledgement. "You good?" he asked. Elena studied him a second, then gave the smallest nod back. "Always." It wasn't true, but it was enough. The convoy rolled out under moonlight, engines growling, headlights blacked. A whisper of diesel and dust rose behind them as they moved closer to the valley. The night pressed in, thick with the kind of silence that wasn't silence at all, it was waiting. She sat in the rear, rifle across her lap, the canvas seat vibrating with every bump. She watched the men, their faces lit by dim red lamps, jaws tight, fingers tapping, each one pretending they weren't afraid, each one carrying their own private ghosts. Duran, the Joker, staring too long at his hands. Singh, lips moving in a quiet prayer. And Elena, calm, steady, but inside, somewhere deep, the old fear stirred. Because she knew valleys like this, they kept secrets, and not all who entered walked out. When the vehicles halted, the air smelled of pine and cold stone, the kind of chill that clung to your bones. Boots hit the ground, rifles clattered into ready positions, orders whispered, shadows stretched long against the dirt. They moved, one step then another, into the dark. It happened fast. The snap of a twig, the flash of movement, and then the crack of rifles splitting the night wide open. Gunfire erupted from the ridges above, sparks of tracer fire carving across the valley. The first shout went up, ragged, panicked. Men dropped, scrambling for cover against rocks, dirt, anything. Elena hit the ground, cheek pressed to cold earth. Dust filled her mouth. Her rifle was already in her hands, scope rising, breath slow, steady. Through the lens, shadows darting, muzzle flashes blooming like brief flowers. She fired once, twice. Two figures crumpled. The ridge spat back in defiance. Her heart pounded, but her hands were still. The sound around her blurred into one long roar, shouting, metal, stone cracking under bullets. And then she saw him. Colonel Grant pinned in the open, his body shielded only by a shallow ditch. His radio crackling with static, rounds snapping past his head like angry wasps. He wasn't going to make it. No one moved. No one could. Except her. She didn't think. She just rose, sprinting low, bullets kicking up dirt at her heels. She hit the ground beside him, dragging his arm over her shoulder. The colonel's weight bore down heavy, each step a battle against gravity and fire. But she moved. One step, then another. They crashed into cover behind a boulder, the colonel gasping, blood streaking his sleeve. For a second, just a second, silence inside her. She had done it. But when she looked back, the others hadn't moved. Eyes wide, jaws clenched, still frozen where they were. That was when it struck her. Not just the gunfire. Not just the valley. But the truth. They didn't believe she belonged, until she stood where no one else would. And now they were all watching. The firefight dragged on, minutes stretched into lifetimes. The team pressed forward inch by inch, weaving through shadow and fire. Elena's rifle sang steady notes, each shot carving a path where there had been none. By dawn, the valley was quiet again. Smoke drifted. The ground was littered with casings, shadows of bodies cooling in the dirt. The men were exhausted, faces pale in the early light. Some carried wounds, some carried worse. The colonel sat against a rock, arm bandaged, his eyes fixed on Elena. A weight behind them, something unspoken. She didn't ask, she didn't want thanks. She just sat apart, rifle across her knees, the dawn washing over her like cold water. Because something inside her had shifted. They had called her unfit. They had written her off. But when the valley demanded a choice, she was the only one who had stood. And that choice, it was only the beginning. What did dawn really mean in a place like this? It wasn't hope, not out here. It was exposure. The light peeled back the safety of night, stripping away the shadows where men could hide. The ridges glowed amber, the sky bleeding pink into gray, and with it came silence, the kind of silence that felt wrong. Elena sat on a flat rock, rifle across her knees, eyes scanning the canyon walls. Smoke still lingered from the firefight, curling lazy against the wind. The others were busy tending wounds, checking ammo, radioing in broken fragments of updates. But no one spoke to her. Not directly. Even after what she had done. She heard them, though. Low voices, half whispers. Would have been Grant if she hadn't moved. Got lucky, just lucky, that's all. She shouldn't even be here. Elena closed her eyes for a second, breathing in the dust and iron. Let it pass, like she always did. But then footsteps, heavy, purposeful. Colonel Grant stopped in front of her. His arm was bound tight, crimson seeping through the bandage, but his voice was clear. "You saw the ridges before we did," he said. It wasn't a question. Elena looked up slowly. His eyes were sharp, but there was something else now, a weight, a question behind the question. She said nothing. "You've been here before," he pressed. Her jaw clenched. The truth brushed the back of her tongue, but she swallowed it down. Not yet. Not here. Grant studied her for a long moment. Then he simply nodded and walked away. No thanks. No praise. Just that. But something in his eyes lingered. The mission wasn't over, far from it. The intelligence officer they were here to extract, codename Sparrow, hadn't surfaced. The ambush had been too deliberate, too sharp to be coincidence. Someone knew they were coming. So they pushed deeper into the valley. The path narrowed, forcing them into single file. The ground sloped uneven, loose rocks sliding under boots. Birds circled high above, their cries sharp and distant. Elena walked near the rear, her rifle steady, ears tuned to every echo. Each crunch of gravel, each shift of wind. She didn't trust the quiet. Singh fell back beside her, his eyes flicking around nervously. His voice was low. "You saved the colonel." Elena kept her gaze ahead. "I did what anyone should have done." "Yeah," Singh murmured, "except no one else did." For a moment their eyes met. His were young, scared, but there was something else in them, respect maybe, or the start of it. Before she could answer, the column halted. Duran's voice floated back, laced with irritation. "What now?" Up ahead 2 men crouched, scanning the ground, tracks, fresh, leading into a ravine. Grant's voice carried low. "Sparrow went this way." The ravine was narrow, walls closing in high, the air damp and cold. Elena's skin prickled as they entered, shadows swallowing them whole. Each step echoed too loud, too sharp. And then a sound. A stone tumbling. A click, metallic, unmistakable. "Down," Elena hissed. But the words were still in her mouth when the explosion tore the air apart. The blast threw dust and rock in every direction, a roar that swallowed shouts and screams. The ravine lit white-hot, then collapsed into choking gray. Elena's ears rang. She hit the ground hard, her shoulders screaming with pain. Hands clawed at dirt. She coughed, spat blood, pushed up to her knees. Through the haze she saw them. 2 men down, one unmoving, another writhing, clutching what was left of his leg. Chaos. Shouts. Blood. And above it all, gunfire. Muzzle flashes from the rim, another ambush. Her scope snapped up. Breath in, out, one shot, a shadow dropped. Another, silence on the ridge, but there were too many. "Fall back," someone shouted. But there was nowhere to fall. They were trapped. Time bent strange in the chaos. Seconds stretched, choices pressed. Elena crawled to the wounded man, Private Kessler. Barely 20, his face pale, eyes wide with disbelief at the blood soaking the dirt. He gripped her wrist like it was the last thing tethering him to the world. Don't let me." "Look at me," she snapped, voice sharp. His eyes locked on hers, desperate, trembling. "You're not going anywhere, not while I'm here." Her hands worked fast, belt cinched into a tourniquet, pressure applied, her body shielding him from falling debris. Bullets sparked against the walls above. The sound was deafening. Why you?" he rasped. And for a heartbeat, she wasn't in the valley anymore. She was in the hospital years ago. White walls, machines humming, doctors looking at her with pity in their eyes. "You won't fly again, Captain Marquez. You should think about medical discharge. Think about your future." But she hadn't. She couldn't. Because her future was here, in places like this, holding lives together when the world tried to tear them apart. She met Kessler's fatting gaze. Because someone has to. The firefight stretched, minutes grinding into eternity. Eventually, the gunfire ebbed. The ridges grew quiet. Whoever was up there had melted away, leaving only echoes and smoke. The ravine floor was carnage, dirt-soaked dark, men slumped against stone, faces hollow. 2 dead. 3 wounded. Morale fractured. Grant stood amid it all, his jaw set, his voice low but steady. "We're not turning back, sparrows close, we finish this." Duran spat into the dirt. "Finish? We're bleeding out here, half our strength gone, and you still want to chase a ghost." Grant's eyes hardened. "That ghost has information that can save lives. We don't leave him." The silence that followed was thick. Men exchanged looks, fear and doubt etched into every line. And Elena just watched. Because she saw it, the fracture lines, the doubt spreading like cracks through stone, and she knew what came next if it wasn't stopped. Mutiny, collapse, the mission dying before it had a chance to succeed. So she spoke. Her voice cut through the silence, calm but sharp. "We move, we adapt, that's what soldiers do." All eyes turned to her, some with contempt, some with surprise, some with nothing at all. But Grant held her gaze, long, steady. And he gave the smallest nod. That night they made camp in a shallow hollow, hidden by rocks. Fire stayed cold. Only the hiss of wind filled the dark. Elena sat alone, cleaning her rifle in the half-light of a headlamp. Her hands were steady, but her mind was. Faces haunted her. The ones she couldn't save. The ones who looked at her and saw nothing but failure stamped in ink. She thought of her father again. The way he stood tall in uniform, the pride in his eyes when he spoke of service. He had believed in duty the way others believed in prayer, and she had carried that torch, even when it burned her. But now, sitting in the valley with death so close, she wondered. Was this duty? Or just stubbornness refusing to let go? Her chest ached with the weight of it, but she pushed the thought down, because if she let it surface, even for a second, she might break. And breaking wasn't an option. Not here. Not now. Near midnight, Singh approached, crouching quietly. He hesitated before speaking. "Back there," he said softly, "when you pulled Kessler out, you didn't hesitate." Elena didn't look up. "Would you have wanted me to?" "No," Singh admitted. He paused, chewing his lip. "It's just they don't see it, the others, but I think maybe you're the only one keeping us together." Her hand stilled on the rifle. She wanted to believe him. But she couldn't, not yet. So she said nothing. Singh gave a small nod, as if he understood. Then he slipped back into the shadows, leaving her with the silence. Hours later, the radio crackled, a voice faint but clear. "Sparrow alive, coordinates hurry." The signal cut. Every man froze, eyes snapping to the radio like it was the last candle in a dark room. Elena's heart hammered once hard. Because that voice, she knew it. Not just as a call sign. Not just as an asset. It was a voice from her past, one she hadn't heard in years. And she couldn't tell them. Not yet. Why did the voice shake her more than the blast had? The radio lay on the dirt, its static fading to a hiss. Men leaned in, listening, but the channel stayed dead. Just that one flare of sound, enough to ignite hope, enough to twist something deep inside her chest. Because she knew that voice. She hadn't heard it in 7 years, not since the mission that had changed everything, not since the day she stopped flying. Her stomach tightened. She forced her face to remain still, her hands to stay steady as she lifted the radio again. But inside, memory pressed sharp as glass. Sparrow wasn't just an intelligence officer. He wasn't just a call sign. He was someone she had once trusted with her life. And she hadn't told them. Not yet. The men argued in low voices. Could be a trap. Could be real. We're not in shape to keep chasing ghosts. Duran spat, anger sharp. This is suicide. Half of us are bleeding, and now we're running on the word of a damn radio crackle. No chance. Grant's voice cut him down, calm but firm. He's alive, we push. Elena watched the exchange in silence. The colonel's gaze flicked to her for just a second, and she wondered if he saw the truth behind her eyes. But he didn't ask. And she didn't tell. Not yet. They moved at first light. The valley narrowed, air colder, sharper. Shadows clung to the ridges like watchers. Every step crunched too loud against gravel. Elena's senses stretched thin, tuned to every sound. Her mind wouldn't let go of the voice. 7 years. That was how long since she'd heard Lieutenant Miguel Vega, Sparrow, call her name. 7 years since their helicopter had gone down in hostile territory, fire clawing the sky, metal tearing open like paper. She had dragged him from the wreckage, half-conscious, blood painting his face. They had survived 3 days together in the mountains before extraction. She had thought maybe. But then he was gone. Transferred, classified, buried in assignments no one talked about. Until now. And now he was here, alive, hunted, calling out for help. Her chest ached with the weight of it, but she kept walking, rifle steady, eyes scanning. No one could know yet. By mid-morning, they reached an abandoned outpost, little more than a ruin of stone walls and rusted metal. The air smelled of ash, old fires long gone. Grant signaled the team inside. They took positions, scanning the ridges, catching their breath. Elena moved to a corner, crouching low, watching the doorway. Her thoughts churned too fast. If Sparrow was alive, why now? Why here? And why did his voice sound desperate? A hand touched her shoulder lightly. She turned Singh, his face drawn, exhaustion carved into his eyes. "You okay?" he asked. She gave the smallest nod. "Fine." He studied her as if he didn't believe it, then lowered his voice. "You know something, don't you?" Her throat tightened. "What do you mean?" "That voice, the way you froze, you knew it." She didn't answer. The silence was enough. Singh leaned closer. "Then tell me, because if we're walking into another trap, we deserve to know." Her jaw clenched. She wanted to tell him, wanted to let it out, but the words wouldn't come, not yet, not until she was sure. Singh's eyes softened. He didn't press, just nodded once and slipped away. But the seed was planted. Someone knew. They set out again by noon. The terrain grew crueler, jagged rocks, narrow passes, air thin and biting. The men moved slower, wounded dragging their feet, exhaustion pressing heavier with each mile. Elena carried more weight than her own pack. She carried the silence of things unsaid. Every glance, every whispered doubt pressed harder. She could feel Duran's contempt behind her, the sneer in his silence. She could feel Singh's quiet watchfulness, his questions unspoken. And above it all Grant, his calm, his unyielding will, but she wondered if he too doubted her. The mission bent them all. By late afternoon, they reached a ridge overlooking a dried riverbed. The coordinates Sparrow had given. But the bed was empty. No movement. No sign of life. Just silence stretching wide. The men spread out cautiously, scanning, searching. Elena's breath caught. Because something was off. The sand was wrong, shifted, patterns too deliberate. Her chest tightened. She dropped to one knee, tracing the dirt with her glove. Lines, indentations, like someone had been dragged. And then she saw it. A mark carved faint into the stone, barely visible, but she knew it. A symbol Vega had used years ago, their signal when words couldn't pass. She whispered under her breath, "He was here." Grant crouched beside her. "What did you say?" She froze, heart hammering, then forced her voice steady. "Someone was dragged recently." Grant studied her face, too long, too sharp, but he didn't press. He stood. "We move east. If he's alive, they're taking him that way." The sun dipped, shadows long and red across the valley. The air grew colder, each gust carrying whispers of stone. The team pushed on, exhaustion etched into every step. Kessler stumbled, pale from blood loss, his arm thrown around Singh's shoulder. Duran cursed under his breath with every climb. Even Grant's pace slowed, the weight of command pressing heavier. But Elena, she kept steady, not for herself, but because every step was one closer to Vega. Every step closer to the truth she hadn't spoken. Night fell hard. They made camp under a jagged overhang, wind howling through the cracks. No fire, no warmth, just cold rations and colder silence. Elena sat apart, her rifle across her knees, eyes on the dark horizon. And memory came back, unbidden. The third night in the mountains, years ago. She and Vega huddled under a tarp, rain hammering down, their breaths fogging the air. He had whispered, voice ragged, "If we make it out of here, I'll never waste a day again." And she had believed him. But then he was gone. And she was left broken. Now here they were again. A second chance, or another cruel twist. Her throat ached with the weight of it. Near midnight, Singh approached again, quiet as shadow. He crouched beside her. "You've been carrying something since that signal," he whispered. "Whatever it is, you don't have to carry it alone." Elena's jaw tightened. "This isn't about me." "Maybe not," Singh said softly. "But if it helps us survive, maybe it is." She looked at him, really looked. The exhaustion, the fear, but also the flicker of trust. For a heartbeat, she wanted to tell him. But then a sound cut the night. A single gunshot, distant, muffled. Every man froze. Elena's chest tightened. She knew. Without proof, without sight, she knew. Vega was out there. And he didn't have much time. Why did the gunshot feel closer to her than anyone else? The men froze, heads snapping toward the sound, rifles raised. The night swallowed everything after, leaving only the whisper of wind. No echoes, no second shot, just silence stretched too tight. Grant's hand lifted steady. "Hold." They crouched low in the dark, breaths shallow, waiting for another sound. But none came. Elena's heart pounded hard. She knew that shot. Not the rifle, not the caliber, the silence behind it. That was the silence of a warning, a marker, a message. And she knew who had fired it. They moved at first light, weary eyes bloodshot from too little sleep. The valley ahead twisted into broken spines of rock, jagged ridges clawing at the sky. The ground was cruel. Every step slipped loose stone, every climb tore at their legs. Singh stumbled under Kessler's weight but pressed on, jaw clenched. Duran muttered curses with every incline. The air grew thinner, colder, until every breath scraped. Elena walked near the front now, scanning the terrain. Each shadow, each crack in stone felt like eyes watching. She could feel it, they were being drawn somewhere, pulled. And deep down, she feared it was Sparrow pulling the strings. By mid-morning, they found it. A fire pit, still warm, ash scattered in the wind. Beside it, bindings cut clean, rope frayed, lying in the dirt. "He was here," Grant murmured. Elena crouched low, fingers brushing the ash. It clung to her gloves, black and soft. Her throat tightened. Because she could see it. Vega had been here, alive, fighting, leaving breadcrumbs in silence. But why hadn't he run? Behind her, Duran spat. "Or maybe this is bait. You ever think of that? We're walking into a damn noose." Grant's gaze snapped to him. "He's alive, we don't leave him." Duran shook his head, laughter bitter. "No, you don't leave him, the rest of us. We're dying by inches for some spook who doesn't even exist." Silence dropped heavy. Men shifted uneasily, eyes flicking between commander and sergeant. And Elena, she felt the fracture deepen. Later, while the men checked gear, Singh edged close to her, his voice low. "You know him, don't you?" Her breath caught. For a second she thought about denying it, about shutting it down like before. But Singh's eyes, steady, searching, didn't let her. She exhaled slow. "7 years ago, we went down in the mountains. I dragged him out." Singh blinked. "And you never told anyone." "Wasn't relevant." "Relevant?" Singh's voice sharpened, but soft enough the others wouldn't hear. "Half this unit is bleeding out, and you're carrying the one thing that explains why we're still pushing. You should have said something." Her jaw clenched, shame and defiance tangled tight. "If I'd said it, they would have written it off as personal bias. You've seen how they look at me. You think they'd listen." Singh didn't answer. His silence said enough. The trail dragged them deeper into the rocks. Hours blurred into aching legs and raw throats. The sun burned hard, shadows slicing sharp against stone. And then movement. A figure darting across the ridge above. Just a flash, gone in a heartbeat. The men snapped rifles up, shouts breaking the stillness. But the ridge was empty again. Grant's voice steadied them. "Eyes sharp, don't chase. He wants us spread out." Elena's pulse raced, because she knew that gait, that silhouette against the sky. It was Vega. Alive, watching, guiding. But why wasn't he coming to them? They made camp in a narrow cleft that night, walls tight around them. The men huddled close, exhaustion pulling at their faces, wounds rebandaged, water rationed, morale bleeding out faster than bodies. Elena sat apart, as always, rifle across her lap. The stars above cut cold and bright, sharp against the black sky. Her mind wouldn't rest. She remembered Vega's voice in the rain, all those years ago. The way he had looked at her like she was more than just a pilot, more than just another soldier. The way he had promised never to waste a day again. And then he had vanished. Now here he was, alive, close enough to touch, and still out of reach. Her chest ached with it, the weight of memory, the weight of what she hadn't said. She whispered to the dark, so soft no one else could hear, "Why are you running from me?" The night broke with noise. A shout. A crack of gunfire. Chaos exploding in the cleft. Elena snapped awake, rifle already in hand. Shadows moved fast, too fast. Figures pouring in, rifles blazing. An ambush. The team scrambled, shouts cutting through the roar. Bullets sparked against stone, the air thick with smoke and dust. Elena fired, blind at first, then steady. One shot, two. Shadows dropped, but they kept coming. Kessler screamed, Singh dragging him down, shielding his body. Duran cursed, firing wild. Grant barked orders, voice drowned by the chaos. And then a flare of light. Above, on the ridge. A single figure, silhouetted against the stars. Rifle steady. Shots sharp, precise. Ambushers fell one by one, clean, surgical. The team pressed back, finding ground again. The tide shifted. Shadows fled into the night, leaving only smoke and silence behind. The ridge stood empty once more. But Elena knew. Vega. It had to be. After the team sat in the aftermath, chests heaving, wounds tended, the air still sharp with gunpowder. Duran spat, voice bitter. "So what now? Our ghost saves us and disappears again. How long we chasing this?" No one answered. But Grant's eyes found Elena, studied her. Too long. Too sharp. She looked away. Later, while the others slept uneasy, Elena stayed awake. Her body rigid, her mind clawing itself raw. Because it wasn't just about Sparrow anymore. It was about her. The scar on her shoulder ached, memory pressing too close. The night she was grounded. The words "unfit for duty" stamped into her file like a brand. The years spent clawing back into relevance, into worth. And now this. She wasn't chasing a mission anymore. She was chasing redemption. But redemption came at a price. And she wondered, staring into the cold dark, if she could pay it. At dawn, they moved again. The valley tightening around them, shadows growing long. Every man walked heavy, weighed down by silence. And Elena, she carried more than any of them. Because she knew now. Sooner or later, the truth about Vega would come out. And when it did, everything would change. They woke to silence. No birds, no wind, not even the scrape of stone that had filled every step of the valley until now. The world itself seemed to hold its breath. Grant led them single file through a narrow throat of rock, walls rising jagged and cruel on either side. The men moved tense, rifles up, boots crunching loose gravel. Elena walked second from the front, eyes sweeping the cliffs above. Every shadow looked too deep. Every crevice looked like it hid a rifle's barrel. Because she could feel him now, closer than ever. Watching. The ambush hit like lightning. A crack split the air, ricochet whining against stone. Then three more, clean and fast, so precise they weren't warning shots. The team dove for cover, shouts echoing between the cliffs. Singh dragged Kessler behind a boulder, Duran cursed into the dust. Grant shouted orders no one could hear. Elena's pulse hammered. She knew those shots. Not just the rhythm, the restraint. He was steering them. And then she saw him. Half hidden on the ridge above, rifle braced, silhouette cut sharp against the sky. Her breath caught. Vega. The others didn't hear her whisper, but they saw him. Duran snapped his rifle up, finger tightening on the trigger. Target on the ridge. Hold fire, Elena's voice cracked sharp. Duran whipped toward her. Hold fire. That's the son of a bitch who's been leading us into every damn graveyard since this started. Elena stepped between his barrel and the ridge, chest heaving. He's not the enemy. The words felt like a confession. Every man froze, eyes snapping to her. Grant's face turned to stone. What did you just say? Elena swallowed hard, her throat burned. That's not Sparrow, his name is Vega, and he saved my life 7 years ago. The silence after was worse than gunfire. Duran's laugh came bitter, jagged. You've been hiding this the whole time. Jesus Christ, no wonder you've been dragging us through hell. You're compromised. He's not compromised, Elena shot back, heat rising in her chest. He's alive, he's fighting, he's trying to bring us through this. Singh's voice cut in, low but sharp. And how do you know that? Because he once pulled you out of the fire. That doesn't make him clean, it makes you blind. Her chest clenched. The scar under her shirt throbbed like it remembered. Grant's voice cut through them all, steady but heavy as iron. Martinez, you withheld intel. You compromised operational integrity. Do you have any idea what that means? Her hands trembled, but her voice stayed steady. I did it because you wouldn't have listened. Because the second I told you, you'd call it bias. You'd call it unfit, like everyone else has since the day I came back scarred. The words ripped out of her, raw, bare. And for a heartbeat, no one spoke. Then another shot cracked the ridge. Not at them. Past them. Dust leapt from the rock 20 meters ahead, a marker, a direction. Grant's jaw tightened. His eyes flicked from the ridge to Elena, to his men. Move, he said. No one argued. They followed the path Vega carved for them. Bullets never aimed to kill, always to steer. Each shot guiding them through the twisting rock, every turn cutting deeper into the valley's spine. Hours bled away. The sun slid low, painting the cliffs in fire. The team dragged their weight forward, exhaustion grinding every step. And then the path widened into a hollow cut from the rock. And there he was, standing alone in the dying light. Elena's breath caught. He hadn't changed, not truly. Older, harder around the eyes, his beard grown rough. His uniform was stripped of rank, his rifle scarred from years of use. But it was him. Vega. Alive. Her chest ached so hard she thought it might break. But no one else felt that. The men froze, rifles raised, eyes sharp with suspicion. Grant stepped forward slow. Sparrow. Vega's gaze didn't flicker. That's not my name. It's the name tied to 100 dead operatives, Duran snapped, voice like a blade. You've been playing us since day one. Vega's eyes swept over them, then settled on Elena. And for a heartbeat, the hardness cracked. Elena. Her throat tightened. You're alive. Duran barked a laugh. Oh, beautiful first-name basis. This just keeps getting better. Shut it, Singh growled. But the damage was done. Suspicion coiled through the unit like smoke, choking trust, fueling rage. Grant's voice cut steady. You're coming with us. You'll answer for what you've done. Vega's head shook slow. If you drag me back, you kill everyone in this valley. You think command wants truth. They want silence. They'll bury me. They'll bury you. Grant's jaw locked. You expect me to believe. You're already dead, Vega cut him off. This mission was never rescue. It was cleanup. Every step you've taken since insertion has been to burn the trail behind me. You weren't meant to make it this far. The words dropped like stone. Elena felt her stomach twist, because some part of her knew it was true. The ration drops that never came, the calm silence, the terrain pulling them deeper instead of out. They weren't the hunters. They were the buried. The team erupted, voices clashing, curses sharp, rifles trembling in furious hands. Duran, he's lying. He's trying to split us. Singh, and if he's not, you want to gamble all our lives on command's honor. Grant, enough. We do this by the book. But Elena couldn't stand still. She stepped forward, voice cracking. Stop, all of you. You want the truth? Look at me. Look at this scar. He gave me that night back. If he wanted us dead, we'd be corpses already. He's not the enemy. He's the only reason we're still breathing. Her voice echoed raw in the hollow. And for the first time, silence didn't feel like death. It felt like choice. Grant's eyes locked on Vega. Then prove it. Why are you here? Why not come in before now? Vega's shoulders straightened. Because I needed you to see it yourself, to understand what you're part of. Command doesn't want survivors. They want silence. And silence means killing anyone who ever touched this operation. Duran spat. So what we follow you, desert, treason. Vega's voice cut like steel. Survival, truth, take your pick. The hollow held its breath. The men stood torn between orders and survival, duty and instinct. And Elena, she felt the weight press harder than ever. Because she knew what came next. She would have to choose. Him or them. The air in the hollow felt heavier than stone. No one lowered their rifles. No one blinked. The sun bled low behind the cliffs, shadows stretching long, making every man look like a ghost of himself. Vega stood still, calm. His rifle hung loose in his hands, muzzle pointed down. He didn't need to raise it. His presence alone was a weapon not against their lives but against their faith. Elena felt her heartbeat thundering in her throat. Every second dragged like a blade. Grant's voice broke the silence first, steady but strained. You expect me to take your word over command. Vega's eyes didn't flinch. I expect you to think, count your dead, count your supplies, count the silence in your comms. You know I'm not lying. Singh's jaw tightened. His hand flexed on the grip of his rifle. He didn't speak, but his silence carried weight. Duran, though, snapped like dry wood. This is insane. We've bled too long to listen to a deserter with a story. You know what this looks like, Grant. You know what it smells like. He's bait. He's always been bait. His eyes cut to Elena, sharp and accusing. And she's been leading us right into his arms. The words hit harder than any bullet. Elena felt her chest clench, her breath stumble. Her voice cracked out sharp. You think I wanted this? You think I've been dragging you across hell just to hand you over? Look at me, Duran. Look at my face. Every scar I've got says I've paid enough to deserve more than that. For a flicker, his eyes softened. But the anger returned fast, covering guilt with venom. Then explain why we're standing in his shadow instead of putting him in cuffs. She opened her mouth, but Vega's voice cut across hers. Because if you do, you'll never leave this valley alive. The crackle of truth in his tone sent a shiver down her spine. Grant stepped closer, close enough that his shadow met Vega's. His rifle stayed raised, but his voice dropped low. Then tell us. No more games, No more breadcrumbs. If you want us to trust you, give us the whole damn story. Vega's eyes flicked to Elena, not for approval, not for strength, for acknowledgement. As if to say, they won't believe me unless you stand with me. Her throat tightened. The scar beneath her shirt burned with memory. She gave a small, pained nod. And he began. The operation 7 years ago, the one they told you was a success. It was. Command didn't want intel. They wanted deniability. I was sent in with a team, same as you. Half were killed by enemy fire. The other half weren't meant to come back, including me. He paused, the words rough with weight. They needed someone to blame, so they buried the mission and wrote my name in blood. Sparrow, traitor, ghost. Easier than telling the truth. His hand flexed on the rifle, knuckles whitening. I've been running since. Hunted. Not by the enemy, by the very men we swore to serve. The silence after stretched sharp. Duran's snarl cut through it. Convenient. Every dead man tells a story where he's the hero. Vega didn't move. You think I wanted this? To spend 7 years sleeping under rock and ruin? To watch every friendly face turn to a gun? You think I'd choose exile over a flag I bled for? His voice broke at the edges, rough with something rower than anger. I didn't betray them. They betrayed us. The words hung heavy. Elena's chest ached, because she remembered the night she almost died, the night Vega pulled her out. The way his voice had cracked even then, like he was already carrying the weight of ghosts no one else could see. She wanted to speak, to tell them, to bridge the gap. But the others weren't ready. Grant's jaw worked, his eyes unreadable. Singh stared at the ground like he was listening for answers in the dust. And Duran snapped. With a growl, he swung his rifle, finger pulling tight on the trigger. Elena moved without thought. Her shoulder slammed into his, the shot cracking into the rock behind Vega instead of his chest. The sound echoed like thunder, rolling across the hollow. For a heartbeat, no one breathed. Duran's face twisted, rage, shock, betrayal. You shield him, he roared at her. You'd throw us away for him. Elena's chest heaved. Her hands shook, but she didn't back down. I'd shield the truth, even if it kills me. Vega's eyes locked on her, something breaking open behind the hardness. Gratitude, pain, maybe even hope. Grant's shout shattered the moment. Enough, lower your weapons now. But no one did. The team fractured before her eyes. Singh's rifle dipped slightly, torn between duty and doubt. His lips pressed tight, sweat dripping down his temple. Duran's barrel stayed raised, trembling with fury. His voice cracked. He's poison and she's infected. You know it, Grant, you damn well know it. And Elena felt every word dig like glass. Because deep down, she knew something had already changed. Her loyalty was no longer clean. It was blood-stained. The hollow grew colder as the sun dipped fully. The world held still, waiting for someone to break. And it was Grant. His rifle lowered, slowly, purposefully. His voice, when it came, was steady but carried the weight of command that brooked no argument. We move at dawn together, no arrests, no executions. If this is a trap, we'll see it coming. If it's not, his eyes locked on Vega, then you'll prove it with action. The relief in Elena's chest was sharp, almost painful. But it was temporary. Because Duran's whisper cut the silence, soft but venomous. You'll regret this, sir. You'll regret trusting them both. His rifle lowered, but the hatred in his eyes didn't. And Elena knew then. The real danger wasn't just command. It was inside their own ranks. That night, as the unit took shelter in the hollow, the air was thick with mistrust. Kessler muttered in his sleep, fevered and weak. Singh sat against the wall, hands restless, eyes darting between Vega and Duran. Grant kept watch, silent, face unreadable. And Elena sat apart, her back to the cold rock, her rifle across her knees. her scar burning like it always did when the night was too still. Vega was near, close enough to see his outline in the faint light. He wasn't asleep, neither was she. Their eyes met across the dark. No words passed, but in that silence Elena felt it, the weight of everything unspoken. The choice she had made. The choice she would have to make again. And the truth that no matter what dawn brought, not all of them would survive it. The morning came gray. No sunrise, just a dim light pressed through a ceiling of clouds, painting the valley in dull ash. The hollow where they had slept felt like a grave before it was filled. No one spoke as they packed. Every boot scrape, every buckle click sounded too loud. Suspicion hung thicker than the mist curling around the cliffs. Grant led in silence. Singh hovered close to Kessler, checking the man's pulse with worry he tried to hide. Duran stayed at the back, eyes sharp, jaw locked, his anger coiled tight like a spring. And Elena, she walked near Vega, not beside him, not behind, somewhere between. Because she didn't know which world she belonged to anymore. They climbed higher into the valley, the cliffs narrowing to cruel walls on either side. The path turned jagged, forcing them single file again. Every step echoed. Elena's hand stayed near her rifle, but her thoughts weren't on the rocks. They were on command. On the words Vega had spoken the night before. You weren't sent to save me. You were sent to bury me. She wanted to dismiss them, to call them paranoia, but too many things didn't fit. The missing resupply drops, the silence on every comms channel, the lack of air cover in a valley that begged for it. Pieces of a puzzle she hadn't wanted to solve. Until now. The first sign came at midday. A drone, quiet, high, almost invisible in the mist, but Elena heard it, the faint whine of blades above the cliffs. Her heart stuttered. She lifted her eyes, caught the shadow moving overhead. Grant saw it too, his fist shot up. The team froze, dropping low against the rocks. The drone circled once, twice, then vanished back into the gray. Elena's gut twisted, because that wasn't enemy craft. She knew the sound, the make, it was theirs. And yet no one had said to expect it. The second sign came an hour later. A drop. A crate slammed into the dirt just ahead of their path, parachute collapsing in the wind. Supplies, clean, marked with their flag. Duran laughed bitter. Well, look at that. Command finally remembers we exist. But Elena's chest went cold. Because she recognized the markings, not resupply, not standard issue. Wrong serials, wrong codes. It wasn't for them. It was bait. Vega's voice carried low, sharp. Don't touch it. Duran spun on him, fury sparking. Of course you'd say that. Anything to keep us starving, crawling after you like dogs. Vega didn't move. His eyes cut to Elena. Tell them. Her throat tightened. Every man's eyes turned on her. She forced the words out, quiet but steady. He's right. Those aren't our crates. They're tagged for retrieval, not delivery. They're trackers. The silence after was jagged, broken only by Kessler's weak cough. Grant's jaw clenched. Move, we're burning daylight. No one argued, but Duran's glare followed Elena like a knife. That night they camped in the shadow of a cliff face streaked black with old fire. The air smelled of stone and smoke, though no flames burned. The men ate in silence. What little rations remained tasted like dust. Elena chewed slowly, watching the others. Singh kept his eyes on Kessler. Grant sat apart, staring into nothing, the weight of decisions pressing hard. And Duran didn't eat. He just watched her and Vega. Elena felt the scar under her shirt burn again. That old warning, that old memory of fire and betrayal. She wrapped her arms around her knees, trying to shut it out. But the night didn't stay quiet. It started with a whisper. Duran's voice, low, sharp, meant for Singh. But in the stillness, Elena heard every word. We're following ghosts. He's leading us straight into the ground, and she's helping him. You've seen it. She defends him every time. If we don't cut them loose now, none of us walk out. Her stomach dropped. Singh's answer came slow, reluctant. She saved your life when you pulled that trigger. Remember that. She saved his, Duran snapped. And don't think for a second she won't do it again. You saw it. She'd rather bleed with him than stand with us. Elena shut her eyes. Her throat burned, because part of her wanted to shout back, to deny it. But part of her knew, in some twisted way, he wasn't wrong. The breaking point came at dawn. They were halfway across a stretch of exposed ground when the sound came. Engines, low, heavy, approaching fast. Grant shoved a fist up. The team scattered, dropping flat against the stone. Moments later, 2 armored transports rolled into view on the ridge above, their silhouettes sharp against the pale sky. The insignia was theirs. Their flag. Their machines. Their men. But the barrels pointed down. At them. Elena's chest seized. It was proof, more than whispers, more than suspicion. Command had found them, and they weren't here to rescue. They were here to erase. The crack of heavy gunfire split the morning. Dust exploded around them. Stone splintered. The team dove for cover, returned fire sparking against steel above. Singh dragged Kessler behind a rock, shouting for help. Grant barked orders lost beneath the thunder. Elena's ears rang, heart pounding. She looked at Vega. His face was calm, resigned, like he had always known this moment would come. Now do you believe me? His words were almost lost in the chaos, but she heard them. And she did. The final piece fell into place. Command had written their fate before the first step. She wasn't unfit because she was scarred. She was unfit because she was expendable. The firefight tore the valley apart. Duran's voice rose above it, furious, desperate. This is because of him, because of her. They led us here. He swung his rifle, not at the ridge but at Vega. And Elena moved again. Her shot rang sharp, splitting the air. Not into him, just near, a warning. Her voice cracked like thunder. You fire on him, you fire on me. The world froze for a beat. Even under fire, the betrayal felt sharper than bullets. Grant's roar cut the chaos. Enough! You want to kill each other, do it after we're not being buried alive. His words snapped the unit back into motion. Rifles turned upward again. Fire cracked against armor. But the damage was done. Trust had shattered. And Elena knew, if the bullets from above didn't kill them, the fracture within would. By the time the transports pulled back, smoke stung the air. The ridge was empty again, but the valley smelled of metal and blood. They had survived barely. But something had died all the same. Grant's face was pale, drawn, his eyes darker than she had ever seen them. Singh sat with Kessler, hands red, lips tight. And Duran stared at Elena like she was no longer human, like she had become the enemy herself. Her chest ached, because maybe she had. That night they didn't speak. No fire, no food, just silence and the sound of their own breathing. Elena sat apart again, back against the cold stone, rifle resting across her knees. Her eyes found Vega's in the dark. No words, no comfort, just the weight of knowing what tomorrow would bring. Not all of them would see it. Not all of them were meant to. Why was the field so quiet after the last shot? The echoes had faded, the smoke had thinned, yet in that silence something far heavier remained. She stood alone at the checkpoint, boots pressed into scorched earth, her uniform torn, her breathing uneven. The others were gone. Some evacuated, some carried out, some never to return. She was still there, unmoved. The soldier they once called unfit, the woman they doubted, the shadow they overlooked. She was the only one left standing. The wind carried the faint rattle of spent casings as if whispering names she would never forget. Her rifle hung at her side, her shoulders trembling, not from weakness but from the unbearable weight of choice. She hadn't stayed because orders told her to. She hadn't stayed because she wanted to prove them wrong. She stayed because something deep inside refused to walk away while there was still ground to hold, while there was still one last chance for others to make it home. And in that stillness she remembered their faces, a medic with shaking hands who confessed he was afraid of failing, a young private who spoke of the baby he hadn't met yet, a captain who doubted her, yet relied on her when the bullets came too close, pieces of lives stitched into her memory, reminders of why this position could not fall. Their stories were hers now. Their survival weighed against her silence. The night deepened and she crouched in the rubble, eyes scanning horizons painted in ash and amber. The enemy would come again, she knew it. But for now she sat in that fragile quiet, allowing herself, just once, to feel the exhaustion creeping into her bones. Alone but not broken, afraid but not undone. A radio hissed in the dirt beside her, static, then a faint voice almost swallowed by distance. Is anyone still there? Her hand shook as she reached for it. She pressed the button, breath catching in her throat, and with a voice steadier than she thought she still had, she answered, I remain. The words cracked the silence, small but eternal. They weren't a declaration of heroism. They weren't meant to inspire. They were simple truth, carried by a woman who had been called unfit, who had been doubted, dismissed, forgotten. She stayed when no one else would. And in years to come, when stories of that night were spoken in quiet circles, her name was rarely mentioned. Yet the memory lingered, the checkpoint held, lives saved, an impossible stand made by someone no one had expected. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts. And in that act, it leaves a silence more powerful than any applause.